Hi, welcome to Overthinking Entrepreneur. I'm Megan, and I've had a successful online business for a few years now, and I think I overthought probably about 90% of my decisions along the way. Honestly, I just overthought whether I should say 90% or pretty much every decision in this intro. So if you find that relatable, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I will help you get out of overthinking and into action so that your online business can finally start growing. So I'm curious, which term do you prefer? Time management or productivity? Think about your answer for just a second here and settle on it, and then I'm going to ask you again at the end of this episode. I'm curious if your answer will stay the same or if it will stay different. And my goal here isn't to change your mind just to change your mind or just to make sure that you think the way that I think, but I do think that so many of us have this goal of time management, and it's what's actually keeping you really stuck. And I had kind of an interesting experience over this weekend where I realized that I kept saying to myself time management, but when I really thought about it, what I meant was productivity. And I think that this is a subtle shift that I had over the years that maybe I wasn't even as aware of the fact that I made this shift, but it's what really made all the difference for me. And so if you, my fellow overthinker, are really stuck and trying to manage your time and feeling like you're doing a terrible job of it, I have good news for you. You might be able to let go of the concept of time management completely. Now, that doesn't mean we can pretend time doesn't exist. It does. But the idea of trying to manage time is something that I think most of us can and should let go of and instead focus on our productivity. So let me tell you a little bit more about why this came up and what I mean by it and why I think this is a better way of looking at it that I think is both going to help you get more done and feel a lot better about it. Because I noticed that a lot of people who are focused on time management feel like crap. They constantly feel like they're failing. They have these big goals to manage their time and it never happens, and then they feel terrible about themselves. And do you see how someone who feels terrible about themselves and their business is probably not going to show up tomorrow and knock it out of the park? So we're kind of keeping ourselves stuck. And then we set the same unrealistic expectations for ourselves the next day. Once again, it doesn't happen, and repeat. So instead, I want to help you kind of shift away from this idea of having to manage your time and instead focus on what gets done. Focus on how productive you've been. And even within that, when I say productive, I do not mean filling every single minute of your day with work. That to me is not what productivity means. Productivity means you know what needs done, you get it done, and then it's done. And then you can go enjoy the rest of your life. So let me dive in a little bit more about where this even came from and my definition of these two different terms. So I am actually in the process, the doors officially open today, of launching a brand new program that I've put together, which is about getting things done. And when I first came up with the idea and decided that I wanted to do it, I had been talking to so many people that said time management was the biggest thing that they were struggling with right now. And I said, okay, I massively struggled with time management early on. This is something I can definitely help with. And I know that how hard it can be and how frustrating it can be. And I've actually taught this in the past. I did a program on it a few years ago, which I thought it wasn't that long ago. When I looked, it was way back in 2020, which almost feels like another lifetime ago. But it was really well received. It helped a ton of people. And we talk more about time management and productivity inside of my membership as well. And I've had so many people find my approach to it very refreshing and kind of the thing that has allowed them to finally start making a difference. So I said, okay, people are struggling with this. I know how to help. I'm going to put something together. And I didn't just want to do a repeat of the program that I did 4 years ago because I've changed. The world has changed. My thoughts have changed, right? Things have changed. A lot of the content will there'll definitely be some overlap because some of it, is what it is. But some of it has changed. And I knew that I wanted the format to change and a lot of that. So I sat down and I started thinking about what do I want to include. And this whole time I'm having the mindset of this program is going to be about time management. How can I help people manage their time? And it was like a brick wall in my own brain. Every time that I sat down to try and work on it, I could not get myself to do that. I could not seem to settle on the format. I couldn't settle on the length. I couldn't settle on how I wanted the training to be delivered. I couldn't settle on the topics. I couldn't settle on any of that. I felt so overwhelmed. And every time that I thought about it, I just felt more overwhelmed. And I just felt like, I don't know, like a toddler digging my heels in and refusing to even think about it, which isn't what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be working on it because I was excited and I knew that people needed it. And I was like, why am I resisting this? And when I get like this, it's usually because the idea isn't right. the thing that I'm trying to make myself do isn't what I should be doing. And it's like my gut somehow knows that before the rest of me does. And so it will just stop me. And so sometimes when I'm procrastinating, yeah, there's a ton of reasons why I can procrastinate. But a lot of times when I'm procrastinating, it's because the thing I'm trying to make myself do, deep down, I know isn't the right move. It isn't the right thing that I should be doing. So in this particular case, I took a step back and I really thought about it. And I said, what is going on here? And why can I not get myself to work on this program that I'm excited about, or I think I'm excited about? And that's when I realized that it was the whole way I was going about it. It was all about managing your time and trying to learn to get more done. And I had all of these ideas and all of these things that I wanted to cram in. And it was basically going to be like, I had, oh my gosh, like 25 days. I was going to trim it down. I wasn't going to make it 25 days, but my initial what I had managed to work on was like 25 days, and each day was going to have a different concept that has helped me in some way. And I just took a step back and I said, I don't think this is actually going to help people. And then we had a squad Zoom. So in my membership, every other week we have a group Zoom and everyone comes together and can ask me questions and we talk through things and help brainstorm. And we had some things come up around this area and around getting things done and people feeling frustrated. And we were kind of discussing the idea of mental/creative energy versus available work hours and just a few different discussions that we had. And I kind of let that marinate overnight. And when I woke up the next morning, I said, okay, I know why I'm feeling stuck trying to get this program going. It's because I don't like it. This isn't what I want to teach people. Like, this isn't what I want someone to walk away from my program feeling. First of all, the way that it was just like a bunch of concepts, but it wasn't really going to help you walk away with a plan. And second of all, just the idea of time management in general, I realized really doesn't align with me anymore. And it never has, but now more than ever, having an almost 2-year-old son who is home with me all the time, I don't really get to manage my time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I am not in control of the vast majority of my day. When he's asleep, or if my husband or a babysitter is with him, then I get to decide a little bit more what I want to do. But even then, sometimes I can't even go downstairs and get a drink. Or I mean, I can, but if I do, he's going to see me. And then if I try and walk away, he's going to cry, and it's the whole thing. So like, even then, I don't always feel like I'm in control of my own time these days. But that is okay. It hasn't slowed me down. And even back before I had a baby, when I was technically in control of my own time, I still don't feel that I managed my time very well. So when I think about managing my time, first of all, we just think about managers in general, right? Managers are people that sit around and tell you what you should be doing. And a lot of times managers don't even do the thing themselves. They're just telling you that you should be doing it. And I guess my inner entrepreneur has always not liked that, right? I've always been resistant to that idea of someone else thinking that they get to manage what I do. And so trying to manage my own time, just using that term and using that concept, it just felt like I was trying to tell myself what I should be doing. But then myself didn't want to be doing that stuff and was resisting. And when I'm trying to create a plan for myself, but then resisting it, that's not really very helpful, right? That's not really going to help me make progress. And then I felt frustrated and I would say, why can I not stick to this? And I would look at other people who are getting so much done and just get so mad at myself. And then I had a phase where I tried learning about time management from a lot of different sources. And so some of these were the leaders within my company. So you probably know by now I started out in network marketing before I transitioned into coaching. And so I tried to learn from some of the leaders in my company. And a lot of that mindset was very hustle 24/7. Like, there was a common saying, there's no BV in TV, meaning if you're watching TV, you're wasting your time and you're not working and you should be hustle, work harder. Like, that's why you're not successful. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, if this is what it takes to be an entrepreneur, I'm not sure. And I felt so confused because so many of these people, especially in network marketing, would present time freedom and flexibility and, this is why you should do this so that you're in control of your own time. But then behind the scenes, they were telling me you have to work nonstop or you're not serious. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand. Maybe I'm not cut out for this after all. Like, am I supposed to be working more than a job? And there are weeks where I definitely work more than a job, for the record. It'll happen sometimes. But I just felt very perplexed by the whole thing because so many people were preaching time freedom and how great it is and how flexible. But then it really wasn't flexible. And I tried to read some personal development books, and the one that really stands out in my mind, and I don't mean to pick on this book because I think it has helped a lot of people, but The Miracle Morning was not miraculous for me. I hated it so much, and it just did not work for me. And then I felt like even more of a failure, and like, oh my gosh, why can I just not do this? And there were days when I had hours and hours and hours available to work, but I just didn't seem to use that time. And then I was beating myself up and wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? What is going on here? Like, what is the problem? And it was very overwhelming and very stressful. And you probably are relating to at least some of this, maybe all of it, kind of feeling that same way. And eventually, what I figured out is that it was my approach. And I was trying to fight against myself instead of working with who I naturally am. I was trying to transform myself into someone who's just simply not me. Are there people out there that sit down at their computer, pull up their to-do list, do all 5 things, and then walk away and they're done? Maybe. How they do that without browsing the most random, I don't even know. I have this thing, I think I've mentioned it to you guys before, but like, Facebook now knows that I do this, so they'll like put these ads on my feed. They're like clips from horror movies, and I start watching them even though I don't care. And then I need to know what the movie's about, and then I'm on Wikipedia reading the summary of the horror movie that I don't even care about that happened to come across my Facebook feed. Like, I guess there are people out there who don't do that. They just sit down to work and they do their work and they move on. I don't know what it's like to be in your brain. I would love to know what it's like to be in your brain, but that is not the brain that I have. And so I remember feeling like I was trying to manage my time, like manage my hours, instead of managing what I did with that time. Making the shift from, it's not about deciding ahead of time exactly what I'll do when and stick to it. And to me, that's kind of my definition of time management. When I feel like I'm managing my time, I feel like I sit down, I create a schedule, and then I need to stick to that schedule in order to be effectively managing my time. And I think it's just something about the word manage that makes me feel that way. If that's not your personal definition, that's fine. You know, we all have different definitions for things. And so maybe you really like the term time management, but you don't think about it in the way that I do. And that's okay. But for me, the way that I tend to think about it is, if I'm going to manage my time, it needs, like, I almost think of it like I'm a manager at a job. Like, let's say that I manage a Wendy's. And so I have to create the schedule. I have to make sure the right people are going to be here at the right times. I have to plug that in and fill in that coverage. That's how I feel when I think about time management. Like, I have to look at my schedule and say, okay, I'm going to wake up at this time and then I'll do my workout. And then while I'm drinking my coffee, I'm going to work on this, and then I'm going to do this, and then Clark's going to get up, and then during nap time, I'm going to do these 6 times, and then I'm going to do this, and after bedtime, I'm going to do this. And that's all great. But what happens when my son is almost 2 and starting to really push my boundaries and really become a full-on little toddler? So I can start out my day and have all these great intentions of what I'm going to do when he goes to bed at night. But sometimes when he goes to bed at night, I feel like I got hit by a train. And I have absolutely no creative energy left in me to do the work, to do the things that I plan to do. And so when my mindset was I need to manage my time, well, I had it all scheduled down to the minute, right? Every available time was full and everything was planned out. And then when that plan just inevitably doesn't happen, then I felt like a failure, and I felt like my whole week was thrown off and everything was thrown off, and I was so bad at managing my time. And of course I always am, and then the downward spiral, and then I feel bad, and then it doesn't lead to me getting more done, and then the next day the same thing. Or what happens when you're doing something you've never done before? When you do something, even when you do something that you've done before, I still feel like I can't always predict exactly how long something is going to take. We are unpredictable people, and we're in the business of working with people. Let's say that you have on your to-do list a follow-up with 3 customers. Okay, great. Maybe all 3 will respond immediately, have no questions, and you'll be done. Maybe some of them won't respond for a week. Maybe some will write back and say, oh my gosh, actually this really tragic thing has happened in my life, and now you're in a whole conversation with them about the thing that's going on. You can't predict any of that. And so a big part of time management is knowing exactly how long something's going to take. And that is one of my absolute weaknesses. If that is one of the things that I am the worst at in the entire world. I am a chronically late person. You probably know this depending on how familiar with me you are outside of this podcast. With the podcast, I can record and schedule and it shows up right on time. But I'm late for pretty much everything in my entire life. And it's because I always think I can do more than I can. I always think, oh, I can do this. I have half an hour before that starts. I have time to do this. Spoiler alert, I didn't. But I always think that I do. And my poor husband has more than once been like, I'm saying this with love. I'm not yelling at you, but like, you just laid out to me 6 things that you think you're going to be able to do before we have to leave. And like, I've been married to you for how many years now? You will not be able to do all of those things in that time. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, maybe I need to pull back my list. Like, I just am not a good judge of how long something's going to take. So if you are, amazing. But if you are constantly trying to guess what all you can get done during any period of time, and you don't know how much time you're going to have, and you don't know how long it's going to take, and then you're trying to cram all of this into this precise down to the minute schedule, it's never going to work. And then once again, you feel like a failure and you constantly feel overwhelmed. The fastest way for me to get right into overwhelm is to have a big to-do list for the day and to be looking at it and looking at kind of like how my day is laid out and realizing there is no way I can get all of that done. Like, that is the fastest recipe for me for overwhelm. When there's things that I need to do and no time to do it, or I can't wrap my head around how it could all get done in the time that it needs to be done, now I'm overwhelmed. And so once I'm overwhelmed, do you think I start taking productive action? Absolutely not. Right now I'm overwhelmed. And so that's not going to get me working. And then I just stay stuck in the same cycle. And then once again, I'm bad at time management. Once again, I'm not getting the things done that I need to. Once again, I'm wondering, is this entrepreneur thing even cut out for me? And so I hope this is starting to maybe make a little bit of sense for you about why time management, I just don't think is the right way to go when you're an entrepreneur. The other thing that I will say is that a lot of the work that we do in our business is very creative work. It is different. Like, can I create a program or record a podcast episode or write a really good post or do a video? All of those things require a certain amount of mental and creative energy from me. There are other tasks in my business that don't. So, for example, it's podcast editing day or recording and editing day, right? I'm doing this right now, obviously. So I need some creative energy in order to be able to record the podcast. But then when it comes to editing and like uploading the podcast, that is pretty mindless work. That kind of work I can force myself to do no matter where I'm at. But the creative work, I can't really force myself to do that. And so that's another thing that I think gets ignored when it comes to the concept of time management, is that just because maybe I have some time available does not mean that I'll necessarily have the available mental or creative energy in that time window. And so I was getting really stuck with that too, because I would sit down and I'd say, okay, well, I know that I need to write a post because it needs to go up tonight and I haven't done that yet. So I know that needs done right now. And I would waste so much time because I'm trying to force myself to do this one specific activity, but I just don't have the mental energy available for it in this moment. And so then I sit there feeling more and more burnt out, more and more overwhelmed. Nothing gets done. And once again, I feel like a failure. So it just doesn't work. And then the other reason, I mean, of course, there's plenty of reasons, but I think the other reason is that time and how long things take and the results you get from them is not as linear in business as it can be in other parts of your life. So what I mean by this is, let's say that you're brand new to your business and you need to write a post about something that you sell. If you're brand new to your business, coming up with an idea, writing it, overthinking it, editing it, making sure it's all good, deciding what photo to use, that might take you a really long time. And a year or two from now, with all of that practice under your belt, it might take you half the time that it took early on. So the amount of time that it will take you to do a task can really vary. Or what kind of post am I making today? Am I doing a short engagement style post? That might take me 2 minutes. Am I doing a really heartfelt sales post? That might take me 20 minutes. It's different. It just depends on what kind of post I'm writing. And then same thing, kind of the return on your actions will change over the years. So in the beginning, when you don't really know what you're doing and you haven't built your audience yet, it might take you a really long time to write a post that's pretty crappy, and then you post it and nothing happens. But then down the line, it might take you half the time to write a really great post. And because of all the work that you've done in the interim, building up your audience and getting better and building those relationships and building that trust and all of the things that you've been working on, now it takes you half the time to write a post, and you post it and 10 people buy. It's very different. So time just isn't as linear and as, I don't know if linear is the right word that I want to use. Objective. I don't think objective is the right word either, but I just feel like time is different as an entrepreneur than it is in any of the workplaces that I've had, at least. And the other thing, I keep saying the other thing, but there's a lot of other things. So I think this is the last other thing, but no promises. The other thing is that, oh my gosh, now I forgot what the other thing was even going to be. Oh, no, now I remember. Okay. So sometimes we can absolutely fill our day with busy work or with activities, or we're technically working all day long, but sometimes that might not really be moving your business forward. So being busy or working long hours does not equal success. There are people that work very few hours, but because of the strategic way that they do the work, they see a ton of return on the investment of those few hours. And then there's people that work all day long and get nowhere. So it's another example of why time isn't exactly linear, and it depends on the stage of business and your goals and so many things that kind of go into what you need to be getting done. And I just don't want you to have this idea that every minute of every day needs to be filled with work in order for you to be successful, or in order for you to be good enough, right? A lot of us have these issues around our self-worth and whether we're worthy of success. And we feel like unless we work really, 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 really hard, we're not worthy of even being successful. So there's so many things that really go into this. But anyway, now that I don't mean to be bashing time management. I don't think it's probably coming across that way. Like I said, if you really connect with the term time management, or if you have a different definition of it, amazing. But those are some of the many reasons why time management just doesn't work for me. So instead, what I like to focus on is being productive. What gets done? What am I getting done in an average day or week or even shorter work session, a nap time? Right now, my son is napping while I'm recording this. I always record during his nap time for the most part. So, what I'm getting done, I tend to look at a daily basis and a weekly basis, because to me, my day almost never goes the way that I set out for it to go. It just doesn't. And that was a big realization that I had when I was working on the program was, do I even want to teach them how to manage their time? Do I manage my time? Do I even know how to do that to be able to teach it to them? And I was like, I don't feel like I manage my time, and I don't think that I want to manage my time. There are days that I set out with amazing intentions and nothing goes the way that I want it to. There are days where it really does just work out how I had in mind, but those are pretty few and far between at this point, if I'm being honest. For the most part, I set out with great intentions and it just doesn't happen that way. And I've had to figure out some workarounds and things. Sometimes I have a late night. I'm willing to stay up late to get things done, because that's one of the exceptions that I've kind of been willing to make in order to have the more flexible schedule. And that's probably too much to get into here. We're really going to dive into that in the program that starts next week that I put together. But my focus is on what I'm getting done overall. My focus is on what is the output. So if you want to think of like a computer, right? You type in the input and then the output comes out, whatever gets done. So I want you to focus on the output, because a lot of times we spend tons and tons and tons of time on the input. But what you're doing isn't actually productive. What you're doing isn't moving your business forward. So I want you to really focus on, what am I getting done and how can I make it work? And how can I work with myself? That's the other thing too. I feel like with time management would be great if I didn't have a child and if I didn't get distracted, if somehow my computer allowed me to do work on the internet but didn't allow me to do anything else that could distract me on the internet. Sure, maybe that would be great, but that's just not the reality that I live in. When we look at the concept of time management like in a vacuum where everything's perfect, great. But when we go into the real world, that's just not what happens. You know what I mean? Or maybe, I can't tell you how many times, I shouldn't say a ton of times, but I've had multiple times over my years of business where I'm just about to go live or I'm just about to do something and someone sends me a message or a text with some really bad news in it. And it might not even be my own bad news. It might be their own bad news about something that happened to them. But that just sends me like spiral. And now all of a sudden I'm not in the right headspace to go live anymore or do a training or whatever it was I needed to do. So I just think that we are not in control of life. Like, you're in control of your life, but you're not really in control of what's happening in a lot of times. And so trying to fit ourselves into the system of time management when life doesn't do its part and fit neatly into your time management system that you've created is setting yourself up for failure most of the time, in my opinion. So anyway, I hope that maybe this has connected with you and helped you start down the path of making this shift, because I think this is the first step, is deciding we're going to take that pressure off of our shoulders. We're going to stop beating ourselves up for not being an emotionless robot that works 24/7 and every available minute of the day is full of work. That's just not, at least my audience, that's not you guys. That's not me. That's not anyone here. Are there people who can do that? Yeah. Honestly, I think people who can do that, I don't want to generalize. And I don't want this to come across as judgmental, but I do feel to an extent that people who are able to do that might be people who don't actually care. If I didn't care as much about my business as I do, I probably could sit down and write whatever post needed to be written. But when I want to speak from my heart and when I really want to say the right things because I care, I'm not always in the right mindset to do that. Or I can't do that 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 2 minutes there. I need to sit down and really think about it. You know, there's certain activities that need to happen in certain ways, and that's okay. And so trying to predict how my day is going to go just isn't it. That ain't it, right? Like the kids are saying these days. It's just not realistic for me. And when I decided to break up with time management, and what's funny is that I broke up with time management without realizing that I broke up with time management, because like I said, I spent this whole last week and a half thinking I was building a time management program. But then I realized I actually don't even feel like I do time management. My focus is on productivity. So figuring out how can I get things done in a way that works for me, in a way that is sustainable and is flexible around my day-to-day life. And I have created a ton of tools. Some of them I've created, some of them I learned from other people. Next week's episode, I'm actually going to dive into some of my favorite strategies to get more done. My favorite little tools and tweaks and hacks and things that I have learned to be more productive. So I'm excited for that episode. I think that's going to be a really helpful one. And if you're listening to this and saying, okay, I relate to this so much and I need help, I am not getting things done, and I really love the idea of letting go of trying to manage my time and just focusing on being productive, but how do I do that? I get it. And if you happen to be listening to this at the time of release, I would love to invite you to come into my new program. So it is called Calm the Chaos, the Overthinker's Realistic Guide to Being More Productive, and we'll be starting next week on the 22nd. So check out the show notes for some more information on the program. And if you are listening to this in the future, my plan at least, now I'll update the show notes if this does not come to fruition, but my plan is for this to be something that is available all the time through my shop. So I will put the link to that if that does come to fruition in the future, but jump in for this first live round if you can, if this is something that you are really relating to and feeling like you could use some help with. So I always like to give you an action step, and your action step for this week is pretty straightforward. I want you to just really think for yourself, what term do you align with more? And you are 100% allowed to disagree with me. If you listen to all this and said, oh my God, she's so annoying and I don't agree with any of this, well, maybe this podcast isn't for you if you think that. But anyway, if you listen and you're just like, you know what? No, I actually do like the term time management, and that's what I want to focus on. That is completely fine, but my program probably isn't the right fit for you. But I just want you to spend some time thinking about, after listening to everything that I said here, and think about it on your own, and feel free to Google, look at anything else you want to, but really, really decide for yourself, what is my goal? Is my goal to manage my time, or is my goal to just be more productive and to get more done? And I'll talk to you next week with some of my favorite tips and strategies and things that I do to help you get more done. I hope this episode inspires you to go take action on something you have been overthinking. As much as I wish you could, you cannot think your way to success, so promise me you're going to go take some action today. Head over to overthinkingentrepreneur.com to find all the cool stuff I've made for you over the years, like my free guide to getting more social media engagement and my Facebook group, Dynamite Entrepreneurs, which has a free course on social media basics.